My name is Isaac Rooflin, and today I will be talking to you about the use of literature in history classes. In this presentation, I will be outlining the issues that history classes have now and how they don't use literature in them. I will also be explaining how to fix these issues and give examples on how to use helpful literature in the classroom, specifically in an 8th grade classroom. I will be doing this by using 3 books that emphasize the time period that I've chosen, which is the Revolutionary War. The 3 books that I chose are My Brother Sam is Dead by James Collier, The Fighting Grounds by Avi, and The Secret Soldier, The Story of Deborah Sampson by Anne McGovern. So just some background. The standards for a history classroom, an 8th grade history class, is that they cover the time from the discovery of America to the Reconstruction era after the Civil War. For this project, I'm focusing on the Revolutionary War unit, which students are required to learn how Enlightenment ideas influence the discontent in the colonists in America. The students will have to see Enlightenment ideas such as the natural rights of citizens and stuff like that. And they will also cover some of the unfair acts that Great Britain forced on America, which include the Quartering Act, the Stamp Act, and the Townshend Act. So, the first problem that I see in history classes today is the lack of utilizing different types of literatures in their lessons. When you think about a history class, we all normally think about reading a really long, big textbook that's boring and just hard to even read. And it's kind of sad that we make 8th graders try to do this when us as college students, we don't even pick up our own history books. Now, I do think that textbooks can be helpful for research projects and finding specific information, but to have it as the only type of literature in a class, it's just not useful, it's not helpful at all. The second problem that I see in history classes when it comes to using literature is that there's no emotional connection with the students. When you're reading a book, one of the best feelings is being able to connect to the main character, to feel what they're feeling, and to understand what they're going through. Textbooks can't allow you to do that because it's just reading facts. Which is pretty much why students don't enjoy history classes today. So how can we fix these problems? I think the way that us as teachers fix these problems is getting students excited to learn about history. History is full of action, it's full of mystery, and yet students tend to see these classes as one of their more boring subjects. If you can find these 2 qualities in a history story, it can make a drastic difference on how students learn the information and retain it. Also, being able to find books that are closer to the age of the students that you're teaching. So if a junior high class, you find a book that's about a 13-year-old boy during a time period, it can really make it easier for students to relate to the main character. The 2 genres that I found most helpful when teaching history is a historical fiction book or biographies. Historical fiction books are awesome because they don't overwhelm students with facts. They actually have a story to it, they have a plot, and it actually makes it fun to read about history. Biographies can also be great because if you can find one about a child that grew up during a time period, students can actually be inspired by what the character or the person writing the book went through, and they can maybe even relate it to their own life. Alright, so the first book that I'm going to be discussing is My Brother Sam is Dead by James Collier. This is a book about a young boy named Tim who has an older brother, Sam, and Tim idolizes his brother Sam. He thinks he's the greatest thing on earth. And the problem that Tim faces in this book is that his family and his brother disagree on views. His family still wants to be British, and his brother wants to break away from British. So the story is pretty much around Tim trying to figure out which side he wants to be on. I chose this book because it does a good job of showing what the Revolutionary War was actually like, especially from a family's perspective, because this happened a lot. You had families who wanted to stay loyal to their home country, and you had the younger generation wanting to rebel and do something different. I also think this book is great because students will be able to relate to Tim because of his age and maybe because of what he goes through in his family life. Maybe one of your students has an older brother that he's always trying to be like, trying to look up to, so they can really relate to Tim in that perspective. The activity that I would do with this book is, it's called Real or Not So Real. I got that from Bright Hub Education, and it's you assign a historical figure to one of your students, then you have them create a four-square diagram where they put their historical figure's name, what they know about the character, what they want to know, what their biggest accomplishment was, and just some basic facts. And then as you're going through the unit, you hang these historical figures up on the wall, and your students are able to look back and see what it is about these figures that they want to know. The second book that I'll be doing is The Fighting Ground by Hobby. And this is about a 13-year-old boy named Jonathan who pretty much doesn't want to listen to his parents and goes off and fights in a war after his dad told him not to, and he ends up getting captured. And so the story is him learning life lessons as he's being a prisoner of war. I think this book is great for a classroom because it really shows what war was like. It shows the students what the Revolutionary War was in battle, and it also has a lot of great life lessons that your students can pick up on, such as listening to their parents, because often junior hires have trouble doing that. I know I did. So the activity that I would be doing with this book is a journal entry project. So since Jonathan is a prisoner of war, he's writing down what's happening to him, so I think it would be great for students to put themselves in Jonathan's position and also do the same thing and write down how they would feel, what they would think about doing if they were in his place. The final book that I'll be doing is The Secret Soldier, the story of Deborah Sampson by Anne McGovern, and this is a biography. This one's true. This is a true story about a young girl who wants to be a soldier, but because she's a girl, she's not allowed to fight. So she dresses as a man and goes and gets into the army, has a really successful military career, and even gets promoted to the general's assistant. She is discovered and she's discharged, but she's still seen as a hero today. There's actually a World War II ship that's named after her. So I would use this story in a classroom because, one, it's a true story, so students are actually able to see firsthand what happened. But it's also a really exciting book. There's a lot of, is she going to get found out? Is she not going to get found out? So students have that up and down throughout it. And I also think it can inspire students to follow their dreams and do what they want. Deborah didn't let the fact that she was a girl hold her back during this time. She went out and did what she thought was right, which I think is really good. And the activity that I will do with this book is a biography box. So students would choose a figure or a character either from the book or just from the time period itself and research them, and then they will advertise their person like on a cereal box, like how Wheaties does with athletes, and they would present on them. They would also include illustrations from the person's time period and have like a motto that shows why their person should be advertised on the box. In conclusion, Steven Spielberg said, "Only a generation of readers will spawn a generation of writers." Now, I know that the quote is talking about writing, but it can pertain to anything. And I think that if we can get our students to read about history, they will know what to repeat and what not to repeat, because our world and our country has made a lot of mistakes, but they've also done a lot of good things. and it's the generations behind us' job to fix what we mess up. But they won't know how to if they don't know what happened before. So literature can change a student's view on history, and it's our job to find them the books that get them interested in it. There are my resources, and thank you guys for listening.